Hello and welcome to How to Win the Lottery.
Not remotely ready for you to start. All right, go. Hello, welcome to How to Win the Lottery, Season 2, Episode 9, 10, 13. 13, Real Life by Brandon Taylor.
Yep. You are.
I am Joey Lewandowski.
And I'm Shreds.
And this is, we're off to there are no speed bumps here. It's all freeway right ahead of us.
Joey leaned back in his chair to stretch, and I just dived right into it.
Oh.
We are here to talk about real life. The season wrapping up. 2 more episodes after this. 2 more books. One very long book, which I'm very excited to read, and then one book that neither of us have read before. So exciting. And then there's also going to be a couple bonus episodes that we'll surprise you with.
Yeah. That's it.
And there's new stuff every other week at the Patreon. Early episodes and literally a bonus episode after each of these episodes, which are dumber and more fun than these episodes.
Yeah, but don't say it like that. Don't say that.
It's a good thing.
Yeah, I guess. Dumber. Sure.
More fun, maybe not.
Well, we loosen the ties a little bit. It's Biz Kaz here at the How to Win the Lottery pod, and in the bonus eps we get in the hot tub.
Ooh, yeah.
And we use your imagination. What goes on in the hot tub?
I'm gonna have to crank your input up way a lot if you're gonna whisper.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize I was whispering.
Yeah, you and Joe, my 2 podcast co-hosts, have a real volume modulation issue. And because I edit every podcast.
All right, don't take me to task here.
I got to ride the boards now because you're all over the place. So Real Life by Brandon Taylor was released in 2020. Shortlisted for the Booker Prize. What is the Booker Prize?
The Booker Prize is, I believe, a prize that goes out to all countries in which English is the native language.
So it's just like best book?
Yeah. Best book written in English, I think.
Meg Mogg and the Girl Who Became the Booker Prize. What? Hold on. Literary prize awarded each year for the best novel written in English and published in the United Kingdom or Ireland.
Yeah, okay. So the book has to be, so it's a British award, and it has to be published in.
So shortlisted means like it was like nominated for Best Picture, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So this is his debut novel.
Well, no, a little different than that, because I don't know why book things do this, but there's long lists and short lists. So there's a nomination process before there's the nomination process, and then there's a winner after that.
Well, like that's just like the Oscars. Like there's every country nominates a film for Best International Feature or whatever they call that award now, and then from that list of like 35 or 40, they pick 5, and then they pick one of the 5 for the one.
Yeah, that sounds right.
This is his debut novel. He considers himself, I wrote it down somewhere, a scientist turned novelist.
That makes sense.
Because Real Life is largely autobiographical. I don't know if it entirely is, but it's a campus novel, coming-of-age novel, partly autobiographical, telling the experiences of a gay black doctoral student in a predominantly white Midwestern PhD program at a school we never know what it is.
Yeah, are you just reading the Wikipedia?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm giving some flavor text to this. He also wrote a collection of stories. Did you read his collection of... You hadn't read this book before. This is the first time you read this, right?
First thing.
He wrote a collection of stories that came out last year, 2021, called Filthy Animals.
Okay.
So he's prolific. 2 years.
Can I ask you, based on what we read, based on Real Life, would you read his short story collection?
I would be interested in reading, if you're like, hey, I read this and here's like the best one. I would read more. I don't know if I'd read a full collection of stories, but I would definitely be interested in reading more from him.
Okay.
Short stories, I think, are hit or miss, and that's not a him thing. That's just a anthology of anything, or just like a collection is tough.
I thought for a little while, I was like, we could do a short story module, but then you can't, because like, what would we do? Just like talk about multiple individual short stories and leave out the weak ones? It just feels like a whole different process.
You would have to do like these 3 Flannery O'Connor short stories.
Yeah. And it doesn't seem like it would be very good to me.
Something I did in AP English where everybody picked an author, like a short story author, I think. And you wrote about like 5 or 10 of their stories for the class, and then you picked one for everyone to read, which was kind of a cool thing.
That is a cool thing.
So I did
5 or 10 though, huh?
I think so. I did Ambrose Bierce.
Okay. That guy's got more than just Incident at Owl Creek Bridge.
He's got a whole slew of them. That's the only one I remember, though. Because I asked my teacher, I was just like, what's something that's like, I'm in the mood for like a Twilight Zone kind of thing. He's like, oh, Ambrose Bierce.
Because of the one story.
Probably.
Are the other stories like that?
I think they're largely like kind of mystery-ish sort of
with
thing.
like the, oh my God, a twist at the end.
Yeah. There's one I want to say, I don't remember. This is going to be a spoiler for a story I do not remember the name of, but it's about like I think it's like a guy, they all have like a twist, I think. There's a guy who's like dying of wounds or something. I don't know. I don't remember the detail, but it's basically like he kills himself as help is coming over the horizon. Like as he puts the knife into his stomach, he sees help coming.
Yeah, it's like the end of the section in what's the name of that last Coen Brothers movie? Not Macbeth, but the one before then.
Oh, Buster Scruggs.
Yeah,
the Ballad of Buster Scruggs.
Yeah, there's the section with Zoe Kazan.
Yeah,
and it's similar to that. That's my favorite part of that movie.
I saw a good tweet this week as the world is on nuclear watch that was like, I'm preparing my surroundings for the nuclear fallout with all the books I ever want to read and one pair of glasses delicately placed atop one stack.
Yeah.
Shout out Twilight Zone. Brandon Taylor wrote Real Life in less than 5 weeks.
Jesus Christ.
Quote, I was like, I'm going to sit down and knock this out so I can get on with my life. Writing a novel ruins your life in really specific ways because you have to live inside of it. It's just a sustained exercise in being miserable. Which is funny because when we talked to Blake Middleton last episode or last week or whenever, he's just like, yeah, this took me years. He's like, I hated it. So like, I just like how like authors are just like, I hate writing.
I can actually see, it seems to me like a book that could be written quickly, right? Because it's not structured complexly. It doesn't have that many interchangeable parts. It's largely the complexities in it are emotional complexities, and like that can be hard to get out. But like if you're just if he's just writing from his gut, like I think that emotional stuff is probably there. So I could see doing a novel. I mean, I couldn't do a novel like this in 5 weeks because I am not Brandon Taylor, but like it doesn't seem like if he were like, it took me 15 years to write this novel, I'd be like, why?
Right.
But like for something like, I don't know, like Underworld or something like that. Like when if Don DeLillo were like, it took me 15 years, I'd be like, I get it. And that's not to say that Underworld is a better book than Real Life.
It's a more complex book,
but only complex in that, like you would have to, it's complex structurally. It's complex as like a system.
Right.
Whereas...
because this book is just basically recounting of a weekend in a summer.
Yeah, it's like a guy puking. Like in the best way. I like...
Oh, you mean the author puking.
Yeah, the author puking. Like, I want to say that I really like this book a lot.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of the stuff that I've said has seemed insulting to Brandon Taylor so far.
No, we both like this book a lot.
But like I think that like it feels a bit like someone just took an emetic and got it all out.
I think so. Yeah, because there's a lot to unpack, which we will get to, but it is just, it's, again, when I said, Underworld's more complex, I'm not saying this isn't complex, it's just differently complex. It's like, it's a straightforward, he remembers, because like the last chapter is almost like a prequel. Like it ends at the beginning and makes the final chapter really heartbreaking, I think.
Yeah.
But it's just like, okay, so like I'm thinking back to this weekend, which is, maybe partly real, partly fake, whatever. It's like, okay, I slept with this guy and then we woke up and we did this. And like you have like if you're basing it on reality, you already have the outline done. And it's just like, okay, I got to write the chapter on like the morning and you just get it out, right? So
structure-wise, I do think that it does seem to be structured around just a series of conversations, each of them incredibly combative.
I said to you while reading this reminded me of Bret Easton Ellis, of just kind of characters hanging out and growing up. And I think, because it was just like, I think it's the conversation, the way that they talk to each other reminded me, the way the characters interacted reminded me. And I said it's without the like scepter of violence, because it feels like in Bret Easton Ellis, and you kind of corrected me, and I'm going to get to that, and I'll let you say what you said, but like in Bret Easton Ellis, like there's just like almost like action movie, thriller movie violence around the corner, like someone's going to kill a dog outside, just like I didn't see that happening here.
Yeah.
But there's a different kind of menace to this that you pointed out. I'm like, yeah, that's true.
I think the menace of this book is different because the thing that's scary about Bret Easton Ellis novels is that none of those characters give a shit. And then the thing that's scary about this is that like everyone cares so much about every word that a misplaced word in the middle of a sentence could cause another fissure to like create an entirely new conflict and drive us toward this, drive us off a cliff, you know?
Yeah. And I think a lot of the conflict is built around the fact that Wallace, the main character, who's, I guess, a stand-in for Brandon Taylor, is not emotionally ready to unpack a lot of stuff. He'd rather avoid conflict than deal with things.
Yeah, which is
in every way, and that makes things so uncomfortable.
Which is like a really interesting decision to make for a protagonist and a narrator to have someone who's like conflict averse, because what you want from books is you want those big moments, but he's always like walking away from those big moments, except for once or twice when he actually really like dives into them.
It sort of pained me to read parts of this because I feel like in the past I have not been able to articulate myself well, and I'd rather walk away from things than like deal with things.
Yes.
And just like looking back because you know we're older than Brandon Taylor. We have the air of experience over this young buck. But it's just like even I'm sure the Brandon Taylor who wrote this novel could look back at the character that he's writing and be like, do something differently. But like he has to be true to himself. But like just everything, he's just like, when he's with Miller, he's just like, I need to leave because I don't think he wants me to be around, but like he doesn't think about what sticking around versus leaving actually implies, either short-term, long-term, whatever.
Right. So let's
what's it about?
Yeah, let's actually talk about what the book's about.
Hit us with that plot. That sweet plot.
Wallace, the narrator, is a grad student in biology. Right, he's got a project where he's dealing with
nematodes.
Nematodes. He's like dyeing them so that they show up on I don't know,
science stuff.
Yeah, science stuff, which I actually really liked. That part of the book is like a dissociative from the emotional content.
I think the science stuff and the tennis stuff are things you don't really read about often. I'm just like, this guy knows those two things. Like the way he's describing tennis, I'm just like, hell yeah.
Can I tell you how much you would like Infinite Jest then?
Really?
Yeah, that is like a tennis book.
Cool. But you know, like it's when we talked about the art of fielding and like the way that it's like, oh, he knows baseball.
Yeah, guy's a fan.
Brandon Taylor like describing like the slice of a serve. I'm just like, that's cool.
This guy has played some tennis.
We'll do Infinite Jest at some point.
Maybe. Yeah.
Just got to pad out a lot of shorty books around it.
Yeah, well, we just got to also, I don't know, not post to the internet that we're doing it so that people don't
Patreon bonus episode.
Attack us with knives. Anyway, so Wallace is a guy who he's dealing with a lot of emotional conflict, but he's also dealing with feelings of inadequacy within the grad program that he's in. As I think most people who are in grad programs feel inadequate. He feels like he has a kind of imposter syndrome.
He's also the first black doctoral student to be accepted in like decades, or like for like a long
which is
time.
Something that he's reminded of over and over again. It's not like he was accepted and then like, this is a colorblind university, as like, you know, I mean, the idea of colorblindness is bullshit anyway, but like he's reminded multiple times that he's there partially because he's black, which is not a kind thing to say to someone, obviously. So he has that on his mind, and then he also, his father has recently passed away. His father, with whom he had an incredibly complex relationship.
Like mere weeks ago.
Yeah, mere weeks ago. And he is not processing that, did not go to the funeral, is with his friends, quote unquote friends, because they mostly don't feel all that friendly to me.
So the final chapter is his arrival to the school. Mm-hmm. And it feels like they're just like, they send an email around or like a Facebook thing, which is like, here's who your course mates are. Good luck.
Yeah, go meet them at the park.
And then he's like these are my friends. And like he's so optimistic. And then we see the entire book is him just like self-imploding. Yeah.
Not
just through his fault, but like
under the various aggressions that he faces throughout the entire novel. And so he has a kind of crush on this guy Miller, who we're introduced as having said something horrifically racist to him. So it's like kind of interesting that he has this relationship with him, but like it is sort of a clue, right? That like the things you have to forgive in that environment if you want to exist at all. It's like, yeah, Miller said this racist thing to me, but like if I did not forgive people saying those sorts of racist things to me, I would be completely alienated from my entire existence at this school because everybody is saying something along those lines.
He also says something to Miller, and I don't remember who says what first, but he describes it as like, it's that feeling out point where you're not sure how you can talk to people who might be your friend or not.
Yeah, he teases Miller over some fashion thing, and then Miller, like, in response, like, when Wallace shows up to a class lecture thing, Miller is like, oh, I thought they let your kind in first, or something like that.
See, it's something about like being able, like standing in the back of the room or something like that. Like I like, you know, now we're both in the back of the room or something. Like, it's just like that's.
Yeah, it's like, wow, you like totally miscalculated that. You thought you were doing like a ironic racism. Look at how cool I am that I can say these things, but also it's like definitely an insult that's meant to hurt someone.
Yeah.
That remains deniability because you can be like, oh, I'm just joking, which is like what racists do, right?
Because this book is built on, the narrative is built on institutionalized racism and probably homophobia.
Homophobia, for sure.
And misogyny.
Yeah.
What's interesting about the group dynamic is that it's largely queer. There's like 5 or 6
It definitely has
people,
gay energy, yeah.
Because there's, Wallace is gay. Miller is like, I'm straight, man, but like he sleeps with Wallace a couple times in the novel.
This is the inciting incident of the novel. Miller and Wallace sleep together, and then everything sort of proceeds from there.
Also in their group is Cole and Vincent, who are a gay couple.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's Ingve, who we don't really know a ton about.
Does not seem gay, or does not like present or identify as gay, but he is very like cuddly with Cole.
I think so. It just feels like, oh, it's just a bunch of gay dudes in this program or whatever.
Yeah. Wallace is dealing with his father's death, and
or not basically by not dealing.
Yeah, he's not dealing with it, and his experiment has been ruined. So he's lost a ton of time in the lab.
And he thinks he's been sabotaged, but
yeah.
It's unclear. It seems like possibly, but that's never resolved.
By this woman Dana, who is
the teacher's pet.
The teacher's pet. And also is very quick to accuse Wallace of misogyny.
Yep. And she also seems not good at science.
Yeah, it's interesting because like she's in there to show that there are certain people that the meritocracy doesn't apply to. The idea of meritocracy doesn't apply to. You can get through doors because of various privileges, even if you're a total fuck up, while other people who fuck up on the same level or less than you will not be given the same benefit of the doubt.
Because the people in his lab all seem good at what they do. Mm-hmm. Like Simona's the boss or the professor or whatever role she serves, and she's tough, but she seems kind of competent. But she's like cruel, and she doesn't like really.
I think she's the advisor.
Yeah, she's like the faculty in charge of the group or whatever, right? Then there's Henrik, who's kind of Wallace's like sort of semi-mentor, who also seems like he doesn't really have time for Wallace, but like is good at what he does and like wants to help Wallace out, and then just kind of he graduates or disappears or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Then there's Dana we talked about, and there's Bridget, who's Wallace's only friend in the lab, but she's also by the end she just like, I'm just the Asian one, like.
Yeah.
Like Simone's like, you have any Japanese recipes? She's like, I'm not even Japanese.
Yeah. When Wallace is talking about his own situation, she is saying that she understands, and he's like, it's so easy for you. And she's like, dude, it is not easy for me. I am also facing racism and misogyny everywhere that I go. You're not like alone in this struggle.
But she seems good at what she does too. And then there's the other woman whose name I don't remember, who like Wallace's work is like working toward her grander project or whatever.
And she's very mean to him
yes.
as well. Yeah.
But she's also like
Katie? Is her name Katie?
Maybe, I don't remember. But she's also like established as like she's great at science. Yeah. Like the only reason she's not doing the work that Wallace could do, because she could do it better and faster, she just doesn't have enough time.
Yeah.
But like it's everyone, like I think that also serves to highlight just the bizarre, the entitlement of Dana is that like everyone there is, good at what they do except for her, and she's not only good, like she's actively like bad, and she like fucks up and then like shirks blame, just like, hey man, he was the one who like he gave me the wrong box, and he's like, I didn't give you the wrong box.
Yeah. And then when she accuses him of misogyny and he denies it, and she says, women are the new homophobic slur and racial slur.
Yeah.
Like she says the words, it's very aggressive.
Yep.
And he is like sort of like takes it like a shotgun blast in the chest, right? He's like, as you would, because it's like you're not or maybe, I don't know what Wallace is expecting in this moment, but like that felt, I guess as someone who as a white dude who hasn't been in that situation, I don't know how expected that is or not expected, but it felt incredibly violent to me.
Yeah. And then what I'm only laughing because it fits the character. What happens from there is that Dana goes and writes an email to Simone like, this guy's a misogynist.
Yeah, I'm dealing with, and Simone is like, I will not have a misogynist in my lab. And he doesn't, it's interesting because he doesn't fight back. He doesn't say like, well, she used these slurs.
Well, because he feels a slight sense of relief where he's just like, because she describes what Dana wrote and she's like, I knew it couldn't be this. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I realized that like, she doesn't see me as a monster, but he also like, she's not like, Dana was completely wrong. She just like, I knew it couldn't be as bad as this, but like, I still know that you're a misogynist. I can't accept that. It's just like, yikes.
So I was trying to think of well, let's get to this later. But there are like throughout the text, you go from conversation to conversation, and each conversation is its own like massive conflict, right? Yep. He has sex with Miller, but then he leaves. He goes to play tennis with Cole, and that like turns into a kind of conflict, even though like they're good friends and they're just exchanging, but like it's still fraught with a kind of tension
because Cole's like, I think Vincent's on Grindr basically.
Yeah.
Wallace is like, well, you should confront him, and Cole's like, I don't want your advice,
right? Yeah.
I want you to listen to me. Mm-hmm. And Wallace is like, hey man, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, every single conversation. And
I was trying to find a lineage for this kind of structure, and the only thing that I could think of was Edward Albee, who is a playwright from the 50s through, he died maybe 5 years ago. He wrote Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf and a number of other plays. And it's some of the angriest stuff that I've ever read in my entire life. And Edward Albee was gay. Did I say gay? Edward Albee was gay. Edward Albee was gay. I think I was going to say a gay man, and then I just said was a gay. Edward Albee was a gay man. There's not that much gay content in his work, but you're able to read into that once you know that. Yeah, I think like processing this anger and this level of conflict, I think like when you look at it from the perspective of Wallace, or when you look at it from the perspective of Edward Albee making that kind of art, I think you kind of see like, as a gay black man, Wallace has his defenses up in every situation, because every situation for him has this potential to become incredibly painful to him, incredibly hard on him by people that are his friends, right? Yep. He's at a dinner party and, a guy that he dislikes, but is like among his friends, questions his whether or not he deserves to be in the program, and like implies that he's only there because of his skin color. And these things are happening in places that are like, supposed to be quote unquote safe spaces, where you're like there with your friends hanging out. So like in every conversation, there's like this minefield of like, there's a real possibility of me getting wounded in all of these circumstances. And life has taught him that that's going to happen, because there's something that there's a chance I misread this, but I think we read Wallace's first kiss in this. I think like when he kisses Miller, I think he describes it as his first kiss. Well, yeah, it's not. Which he does describe it as his first kiss, but I don't think he means it like that. Because I bring it up because like that night he like either goes down on Miller or they have sex or whatever. But we learn, it's like, oh, that's kind of happening quickly. I don't know. But we learn that he has been sexually abused and assaulted and raped for most of his life. Mm-hmm. And not only that, but like then accused of being homophobic slur for like letting that happen when he was like 5 years old or whatever. Like it wasn't the man that was in the house's fault. It was his fault for like letting it happen. Which is how parents or people of power around us protect themselves from their inability to provide their roles as guardians, right? They say like, well, you were asking for it. It's like children aren't asking for anything. They're children. Right. What are you talking? That child could be doing anything and they still wouldn't be asking for it. But so he has not been protected by the people that were supposed to protect him.
To the point where like his dad is just like, I don't want to be your father anymore, and just like moves down the road and just never sees him again.
Yeah.
And then dies. And like he realizes by the end of the novel, he's like, I'm never going to know why he moved out, like what I did, or what, not even what I did, just like why he didn't want to be around, and now I can never ask him.
Right. Yeah, so there's that, like, that's a tension that doesn't go away, right? So he's carrying that in his, in his shoulders, in his stomach, whatever, as a sort of like conflict ready at any moment. But like the point is that all of these people have within them the potential to hurt him at any moment. Most normally, in sort of verbal ways, violent ways, but ways that are verbal, right? They can hurt his feelings very badly. They can hurt his sense of belonging very badly. But it's manifested physically in Miller, who he is emotionally attached to and who he has sex with, who he shares his first kiss, quote unquote. But I think by that he means that it's his first like emotional journey into intimacy. From that perspective.
So like he's maybe had hookups or whatever in the past.
Yeah.
Because it does seem like
Miller's like for maybe the first person that he like really likes that he's kissing. And Miller, like after he and Miller have sex, and Miller is also a person that has wounded him emotionally quite a few times. We learn about Miller that Miller actually is like an incredibly violent person, and he has like a switch inside of him that when you flick it, he will take your head off.
He describes almost killing a kid who was basically like happy that he was going to Purdue, and like the kid was being a little pompous about it, but like the kid was just like, yeah, I'm gonna go to Purdue, like I'm just gonna get into Purdue or whatever, and like Miller almost beats him to death.
Yeah,
and like that's like his like he doesn't feel good about it. He's shameful about it, but like he finally unloads that to Wallace,
which is interesting too because he unloads that to Wallace. Like Wallace doesn't want to tell about his past, but Miller's like, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to like, you can tell me about who you are. I want to know who you are. And Wallace says this incredibly painful story about him being sexually abused as a child. And Miller in return tells about himself. And whereas Wallace's story was about himself being abused, Miller's story was about him abusing someone.
Right.
And Miller treats that with the same weight. Like he acts like it's the same level of confession. Like and I could see, sympathy with Miller in some ways because like that is probably a very hard thing to say. And of course, like he probably has legitimate issues, but like it's a weird thing to share when someone says, I was abused. And you go, that funny you should say that because I actually almost killed a kid once.
It's like the Jerry Springer show Baggage. Do you remember Baggage?
I don't.
It was a dating show where I don't know if both contestants had, or I think it might have been like a woman and 3 dudes. Mm-hmm. And each dude had a little bag, a medium bag, and a big bag, like suitcase sizes. And each of those were a different secret that they harbored.
Okay.
And
they were literalizing the metaphor of
exactly.
Baggage. All right.
And I don't remember how the game worked, but she would like do whatever and like, I want to hear your little baggage. And you're just like, I cheated on my SATs. She's like, I don't give a shit about that. Whatever. And then like somebody's big baggage is like, yeah, I murdered a family of 4. And she's like, that might be a deal breaker.
Yeah. Why not just say the big baggage first?
Because I think it's a game show. Like you want to keep
you have to
keep people around for the full hour. Wallace has big baggage, and Miller's is like medium baggage, but he's treating it like it's big baggage.
I think
I also might have the entire concept of the baggage wrong. I've only seen like it was one of those shows where I'm like, I'm not supposed to be watching this. I'm 9. It's the 90s. I'm home during the day. My mom's in the kitchen. She can't know that I'm watching Baggage.
Did you ever watch Elimidate?
No.
Oh, it's a show where there were lots of hand jobs in hot tubs. And I was watching that when I was, I don't know how old.
Cool.
Maybe I was like of a proper age to watch that. Maybe I was watching that when I was like 17 or something. I have no concept of how old I was once you get past like 30. Why are we? Oh, okay. Because like my point here.
Eliminate came out in 2001.
Yeah, okay. I was an adult. I was in college already.
It debuted the week of 9/11.
It's the 9/11 of dating shows.
4 suitors vie for the hand of one lucky single.
Right. It was like the equivalent. It went along with things like Room Raiders. Like they were like the same kinds of shows. Room Raiders, which had a heavy presence at my college.
Season 1, episode 2, foot fetishist. Episode 2 about foot fetish.
Yeah. Okay.
6 seasons of that show. 67 episodes.
Wow, that's too many episodes.
It's way too many eliminates.
How many hand jobs can you give in hot tubs? I just remember that there was always a hand job in the hot tub. Always. I may have just watched the same episode over and over again. But my point is that Nick is the actor. Nick Miller is the actor. I'm saying Nick Miller because he's the guy from
I told you that, like,
that
because
TV show.
New Girl, because, like, we both love Jake Johnson. I was like, I'm just picturing Miller because Nick Miller, I'm picturing Jake Johnson.
Absolutely horrendous casting.
Like, that's terrible casting. But then, yeah.
So Miller is the actor and Wallace is the acted upon. So
Correct.
it's like not equal levels of confession.
Yeah, it would be like, he's like, it's not exactly this, but it's just like, I was assaulted because I was gay. He's like, funny you should say that. I beat up a kid for being gay.
Yeah. It's actually, like, in some ways I can see why it is more intimidating and more intimidating, I don't know, because I'm not in Wallace's position, so I don't know. But I can understand why it is intimidating for Miller to say these things, because when Wallace admits his things, which is probably horrific and terrible to admit, if Miller abandons him because of that, it's because Miller's a dick. It's because Miller is like a total fuckboy who is like shallow and incapable of dealing with the emotional maturity of knowing and befriending and being in a relationship with someone who has their own trauma. If Wallace bails on Miller, it's because Miller is a violent person who might like break your skull open.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, comes to bear later on in the novel.
Yes. I also, like, I can see, and I'm not trying to defend Miller here in any way, but I can see why he would be maybe more, why he could think it's of equal weight, because maybe to his mind, what happened to Wallace was horrific, but it wasn't something he did. Like, it just happened to him. Yeah. And Miller's like, yeah, but I messed up. Like, you just had a terrible thing happen to you, but, like, I'm confessing something that I did.
And they're also just going, hey, this is the worst thing that ever happened to me.
Right.
Right? They're both like, this is the hardest thing that's ever, like, I've ever been through in my life. And the difference is that, it would be different if Wallace were the kid that got hit and had to, you know.
But that violence, Miller's aggressive tendencies show up as they, like, their second or third time sleeping together is, like, very rough sex, like, where they're, like, caked in blood and sweat.
Well, because Miller shows up at his house and we learn that drunk, and he had been in a fight at the bar
because someone called him homophobic slur.
Yeah, and so he reacted negatively to the possibly extremely negatively to the homophobic slur because he had, though previously identifying as straight, he'd been in this past weekend in a gay relationship, and all of a sudden is now identifying as this thing that he maybe had previously been, part of the privileged group that got to use the homophobic slur as a hurtful thing to say to people on purpose to wound them.
Yeah.
And now he was the one being wounded by it.
Because it does sort of seem, and maybe it's just Wallace's, because it's not told from first person, but it's told from Wallace's perspective, right? That
close third person.
That Miller...
I think I called him the narrator earlier, and that's a mistake.
I got the impression early that Miller was not gay. That he's just like... He's a handsome man that Wallace has a crush on. But then by the end of the book, which is the end of the weekend, Miller's initiating, like, he's just like I'm into, like, I want this. So,
yeah, I don't think, it's the fluid boundaries of sexuality. I wouldn't call Miller gay or not gay, but he's definitely, like, having sex with men.
Because there's also the discussion within the novel of something that I'm not able to speak to, but Cole and Vincent are talking about the differences between being gay and being queer, especially in regards to the dating app and in terms of open relationships, and the other couple that they're friends with that has an open relationship, and, like, well, they're queer, they're whatever, right? I'm just a gay dude.
Yeah.
Which I don't have the
I wouldn't try to decipher that because it feels like any attempt that we made would be.
But it does feel earnest in that way.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there is a people should read this book. I think that, like,
how'd you hear about this? I probably should ask you that more often, because, like, especially for books that you hadn't read before,
So this is a book that is on a list of, so every semester I look for recent books.
Okay.
Like, because when I teach literature, I try to keep it within the last couple of years so that students can see literature as something that is alive and thriving and written by people who are 10 years older than them, not people that are 70, not people that are not people that have been dead since the 50s, right? I want them to read about people who are
they can follow these people on Twitter if they want.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's a big deal to me. Like you can even ask someone a question on
They're
Twitter
accessible, yeah,
if they want. Or you can become a lifelong fan and follow someone's career and get excited for their next book coming out.
Which is why you started the season off with Sylvia Plath, so we can so you can really like lean into that.
And that was a specific request.
From me? From Meg?
From Meg.
Yeah. That was a great book, though. Loved it.
Yeah. I think there's a
balance, I know.
There's definitely a value to like looking at older
I'm just
stuff
teasing
too.
you.
And then like among the round of books that I think are look interesting, I then try to, because I teach at a minority serving school, so I try to get books that reflect the demographics that I teach.
Sure.
And so I'm always like looking for books by contemporary Black authors, contemporary Latino authors. And then within that context, then I'm also looking for LGBTQ plus authors, because that serves a significant portion of the school's population too. Because not only like, the history of teaching literature, there's a lot of white dudes teaching white dudes to
not white dudes.
Yeah, and it's like I
Mark Twain.
Yeah, and or not even. I mean, they're like something like I don't know, Stephen King or something like that, like something contemporary, but they're just like, I don't like. There's nothing about this that I can relate to.
Right.
So I try to, and you're never going to like. That's like an incredibly difficult balance of building a syllabus for literature for like an introductory.
Which you also try to do here too.
Yeah. For like, but like the difficult time in building a syllabus for an introduction to literature class is that like you're not going to hit all demographics any given semester. You have to like be totally conscious of a number of people checking out because they're just like, this book doesn't speak to me at all.
Which you talked about, I don't remember what book you talked about, but you talked about on here before about you thought your kids were going to like some book that you picked and they just, none of them, maybe a couple books, right? Just like you never know really.
Yeah. It's very, very difficult to figure out which ones students are going to like and which ones they're not. So anyway, Real Life was part of that search. It was like I have a long list of books that are like contemporary Black and LGBTQ plus authors.
So you didn't pick this book, but it was on your radar.
Yeah, it was on my, because that list of books is 100 books long,
which is good.
But then this book was like I knew it was a campus novel. So I was like, well, I also don't get the opportunity to teach literature every semester. So like, that's a long list of books that like, I'm not going to get to teach all of them. I saw that we were doing the campus thing and I was like, well, this is an opportunity for me to read that book, even if it's not for school. Like I wanted to read it anyway. So I thought I'd bring it into this.
Yeah. We have an email address, lottery@cageclub.me, and our friend Egg, who requested the bell jar, writes in her reaction to Real Life. So if you want to email and we'll read on the next episode. Also, by the way, next episode, bonus episode, not 2 weeks later, 2 weeks from now, the instructions by Adam Levin. Meg on Real Life. This book was so good, but it was such a punch to the gut. Kind of felt like the whole book was centered on disappointment stemming from unfairness. Wallace not excelling in grad school because Dana's a heinous bitch. Wallace's friends not standing up for him when Ramon was saying so many blatantly racist things to him. Wallace remaining in a clearly toxic relationship. Even the ending felt so sour. Well, I mean, staying in a relationship, it's been 48 hours, if that, right? It's not like they've been together for weeks.
Yeah, but I think probably what Meg's speaking to here, as far as staying in a relationship, is that they get into a literal fist fight and then have sex after that. And then like have a cool down period where they're still like clearly
working through some stuff.
Whereas like, I think a lot of people, once you get to the point where he's choking him, he's holding him so tightly that Wallace can't breathe. I think you probably, a lot of people bail.
Be like, I'm good
from that point. Yeah.
Even the ending felt so sour. Ostensibly, it ends on a very positive note, And as readers, we know that the joy that Wallace is experiencing is not going to last. The worst part is we're left without knowing if Wallace, quote-unquote, ends up all right.
I gotta think he does. I mean, I'm not 100% sure what all right means. I think that these conflicts are conflicts that he goes through for his life because this is the world that we live in. And unfortunately, he has these I mean, you can work through that stuff, but I think that he has been wounded enough that he is going to have to do a significant amount of self-care to get past any of that. So all right is like a dot on the horizon, a million miles away.
Also, if we take this to be autobiographical, he got through it because he's writing about it and he seems to have processed, at least to a certain extent, what happened.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I mean, anytime someone says a novel is autobiographical, I always think like, I wish I didn't know that because I kind of...
You want separation of church and state?
I don't know. This is a tough question. We don't know what's true in the novel and what's like, even if you say it's an autobiographical novel, we don't know what's made up and what's not. And I think it's dangerous at any point to assume that this is a thing that really happened versus this the thing that was dramatically rendered. I'm sure that Brandon Taylor in a science program dealt with issues of racism and homophobia.
Yep.
Like that is a certainty that like I would bet the house on.
Sure.
You know?
He's 2 graduate degrees, so like University of Wisconsin-Madison, University of Iowa. So like he's...
Oh, Iowa's probably the writing workshop.
Which is what I thought.
Yeah,
he probably went to Wisconsin for science.
Mm-hmm.
Was like, I don't want to deal with nematodes anymore. I want to write about nematodes.
Yeah.
Iowa.
And then he went to Iowa, which is...
Where Lena Dunham's character went in Girls.
I mean, also, well, here's a fucking thing, is that I'm sure that Iowa, even the Writers' Conference, even like the grand liberal tradition of the arts in college...
Supremely shitty?
Like, yeah, like I'm sure that there is still an unbelievable amount of racism and homophobia in that context. Yeah. I mean, you bring up Lena Dunham, like that's enough, right?
Is she racist?
Well, Lena Dunham is a problematic figure.
Sure.
Let's leave it at that.
We'll get back to Lena Dunham somewhat when we get to casting.
Really?
Well, Adam Driver, Girls.
Oh, sure. Okay, yeah.
I was impressed, Meg says, that this book talked about race and queerness both as intersecting and distinct. For example, scenes in the lab deal mainly with aspects of race. When Wallace is with his friends or Miller, you get more of the intersection.
Yeah, that's a great note.
I found that when Wallace is being mean to people, like telling Dana to fuck off when he brought up Vincent being on the app at dinner, those 2 different things. I misspoke there. Those 2 different situations. Found those especially satisfying, but those moments are short-lived because he gets punished for it every time.
Yeah. Some people can get away with things, some people can't. And that's a degree of privilege.
The dinner thing is, so he playing tennis with Cole, and Cole's like, yeah, he's on the app. And so, like, there's, like, an awkward moment at dinner, and, like, he's getting shit. And he's just like, hey, man, so, like, I saw you on the app. And they're all like, that's a fucked up thing to say. He's like, this back.
He's dropping a nuclear bomb on dinner. Also, I don't...
that's kind of Curb Your Enthusiasm-ish.
Yeah, I don't... Like, everyone was like, that's totally fucked up. And in my head, I'm like, he was doing Cole a favor. Like, I feel like that's something that... Because Cole can't admit that Cole was on the app. So, like, Wallace is stepping in and saying, now we all know this thing. And now Cole can have this conversation with his boyfriend that he wants to have, but right. Without being accused of spying or accused of anything like this.
It also feels like like the way that they react feels like Cole has talked to everyone about it. Because they're all like...
Yeah, that's a funny thought. I didn't think about that
because
at all.
They're all like... Yeah, okay, so say Wallace didn't know. I don't know. That's still kind of a weird thing to say at dinner. We're just like, oh, I was on Grindr. Like, they don't name Grindr. Like, I was on Grindr the other day and I saw your profile and, like, that's pretty cool. Like, innocently, that's still going to be a little weird for dinner. But I think innocently, like, you can pass it off as just like oh, like, that's cool that you guys are in an open relationship or whatever. But everyone's like, you're not supposed to bring this up. So, like, it feels like Cole is talking to everybody except for Vincent.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe not.
Yeah, that's a good note too.
Because they're all angry at Wallace for saying it. It's like, well, how do you know? Because Cole maybe told all of them.
Yeah.
I like the condemnation of white feminism. Honestly, the biggest from a white woman.
That's the way it goes. Yeah.
Meg is the villain. Honestly,
leave Meg alone.
Honestly, the biggest villain in the story is Dana. Yes. Also, my cat's name is Dana, and I told you I was picturing her kind of like a BoJack Horseman style, which is like a cat in the lab
Yeah, Dana's a weird name for a cat, but keep going.
Well, they also describe her in the novel as having cat-like hazel eyes. I'm just like...
Weird.
Honestly, the biggest villain in the story is Dana. When she invoked the N-word to describe women, I was speechless. But not the F-word. She doesn't put that in here, so...
Stop picking on men.
And I rolled my eyes when Simone said that she, quote, couldn't have a misogynist in her lab. Like, she can have a racist in there. No problem, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, Simone herself is racist.
Sure.
Right? And so, like, she's blind to this idea, which is the white feminism that Meg is talking about, which is, like, when people are, like, people who identify as feminists, largely white women who identify as feminists, see the world through the angle of
that they're the victim.
Of gender,
yeah,
and don't see intersectionality. Mm-hmm. So they're blinded to things like racism and homophobia and stuff like that because they're prioritizing this idea of misogyny, which I mean the world would be better if we looked at all those things in conjunction with one another because they largely are in conjunction with one another.
I think I disliked, Meg says, more characters than I liked. Vincent was particularly annoying to me because I took it personally when he spent all his time complaining about Cole being in grad school. That's just what happens when someone is in grad school. It takes up your life for X number of years, and it's something other than real life.
Well, also, like, I want to say that I've been in both of those situations. I've been in the situation, if you're with your friends from grad school and your significant other is with you, most of the talk is about grad school. Most of the talk is about shit that exists in the context of your small worlds. And so your significant other is oftentimes cut out of that and they feel alienated, right? And I've been on both sides of that, although probably I've been the perpetrator of that more than I've been the victim of it. But like that's what that's like a real like regular part of a relationship.
Yeah. Also, I don't want to hang out with like anybody in this book, I don't think. Maybe I do. I don't know.
No, I don't really.
When we get to the thing on the Patreon thing...
Bridget seems all right.
Yeah. But she also might be just all right by comparison. We don't really know a lot about her. Anyway, Bridget was probably my favorite character, says Egg.
Okay, there you go.
I would have liked to have had more scenes with her. I think there were only 2. But I also think her presence was limited for a reason. It's like she's in the room with us. The scene where she exposed Wallace's blind spot for racism that was not happening to him was powerful. Obviously, it's not excusing inaction, but just bringing it into the light the ignorance the people have when things are not happening to them.
Yeah, and I think that's like something that Brandon Taylor is doing in a really thoughtful way, right? Because he's like sort of going from character to character and showing that this is true of all of the characters, that they're all like caught up in their own in the ways in which they've been victims of various aggressions without being sympathetic to the ways that other people have been victims of various aggressions. Yep.
All in all, Meg says, as to wrap up the email, I found this a very powerful book.
Yeah, not a fun one, necessarily.
No, but it's very easy to read, too.
Yeah, I went right through it.
Like, it took me, just because I've been busy, but, like, I basically read this in, like, 3 or 4 big chunks. Because, like, you can sit down and, like, all of a sudden you're through 70 pages.
That's what I did the first night. I read 60 pages. I rarely read 60 pages all at once. I try to read 50 pages a day, but I divide it up throughout the day. But with this book, I sat down and I read 60 pages straight through the first time that I sat down to read it because it went by so quickly.
I also do think, I probably think about this more often or more than other people, but like I think the chapter breaks are in good spots. Mm-hmm. Like Secret History is a very long book that has like 8 chapters.
Yeah.
This has like 9 or 10 chapters, but it's like half the length of Secret History, basically.
Yeah.
And they feel natural, and they feel like, okay, I can have a breather, or I can keep going if I want to keep going, right? So, did you know that this is being adapted?
No, I didn't.
So,
who do we have? Who's?
There's only one character, the Wallace character. So, on December 9th, 2020, so about a year and a half ago, it was announced that Kid Cudi, his Mad Solar banner, is developing an adaptation of the coming-of-age real life with Cudi set to star.
Fascinating.
Scott Muscudi. Braun Studios acquired the rights to the Booker Prize shortlisted novel Mad Solar, and then in October 21, so like 6 months ago, Brandon Taylor revealed he had finished the first draft of the screenplay. So he's writing the screenplay.
Beautiful.
With Kid Cudi in the starring role.
Wow. Okay. I don't know. I don't think that I've seen Kid Cudi act before. I know he's been in some stuff. He was certainly Scott Aukerman's band leader on Comedy Bang Bang for a little while.
Like, that coincided with him taking care of some mental health issues that, like, he, like, left the show to, like, I think he's been very open about, like, better improving himself. And like, that just kind of intersected at the same time.
And then he was replaced by Weird Al, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Kid Cudi was in like one scene of Don't Look Up as Ariana Grande's boyfriend, but like basically playing himself.
Okay.
He was in Bill and Ted Face the Music. He was in Need for Speed with our girl.
That's right. That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of because I watched that for your other podcast.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, and he was charming in that. I was not picturing him as Wallace at all.
He's also in the upcoming Ty West film X.
Okay.
Or maybe that's out now by the time this episode's out. I think it's out now by the time this episode's out.
I was thinking when I was reading this, I thought he's too old for the role, but I think everyone would be too old for these roles. Even though I was thinking of them as adults.
You don't need to like.
I was thinking of these characters as 30 years old, 35 years old.
They're probably like 25, 26.
Yeah, but they seem older to me. They all seem like adults in a way.
But they also all seem like dumb kids.
Yeah, they're like straddling this line. I was thinking of Brian Tyree Henry because
which I think is a great cast. Great casting. Because like one of Wallace's defining characteristics of himself is he's like, I'm fat. And they're like, You're not fat. And like Brian Tyree Henry's not fat, but he's also like not thin. Like Kid Cudi is thin.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, and Brian Tyree Henry is one of those actors that I'm just like, there's that part in that like Q&A with Kevin Smith where he's talking about Ben Affleck and he's like, put Ben Affleck in everything. Make a new Jaws, Ben Affleck can play the shark. Like that's how I feel about Brian Tyree Henry. Like Brian Tyree Henry could play the new shark in Jaws if he wanted to. Like that guy's great.
Yeah. And then I'd spoiled it before.
Adam Driver as Miller because you need someone who is incredibly tall and very physically intimidating.
He's also like incredibly like the character Adam on Girls is very violent.
Yeah. Well, he's got explosive anger that I think would play directly into how this role.
There's a really nice description. Nice is a weird word. After they shower together toward the end of being like even more impressed by Miller's like size, seeing him towel off in a too small bathroom, like just like the length of his limbs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So those are the two, what I would think of as the two main characters. I don't really have any casting for anyone else.
I was just texting our friend, the Honorable Judge Matt Orderly, saying you around. He says, bedtime. Sorry, fellas.
Bummer. Okay.
Said, all good, sweet dreams to the little ones.
Yeah, we got the timing is just off for when I can get up here and when we can do this.
We've been doing these on Friday nights. Yeah, we record at bedtime. Did you think of any other casting for any? Because like like I was saying, and then I wanted to get out of my head because it was just weird, but because of Miller, I was thinking Nick Miller, Jake Johnson, and then just on that show, Lamorne Morris, because like there's the black and white thing here. So I'm just like, then it became like weird, like New Girl / fiction, where like Winston and Nick were sleeping together. I'm like, I don't want that.
You're
like,
so weird.
But then you're like Brian Tyree Henry and Adam Driver, so I was like, okay, good. Like that got this out of my brain. So
yeah, I think both those dudes are like 40 though, so that's probably a little too old.
Adam Driver, 38. He'll be 39 this year. Brian Tyree Henry, 39. Going to turn 40 by the time this episode's out. So,
booyah.
Nailed it.
Yeah, so that's like about 15 years too old for this, but that's fine. Doesn't matter.
We have a time machine that you can put people back in any age.
Yeah.
It's fine.
I would like to see Rock Hudson as Miller, and as Wallace, I would like to see, let's see.
Ernie Hudson.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be great. That's a young Ernie Hudson.
Like Ghostbusters?
Yeah. No, younger than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like Ghostbusters 2.
Yeah, he was younger in Ghostbusters 2 than Ghostbusters 1.
We're on Twitter at LotteryPod, patreon.com/LotteryPod. I think our Audible thing went away, but if you go to cageclub.me/lottery, you can do a thing there. Keep reading, please. Please keep reading.
Today's crime is...
Wait, do you remember what the crimes were the crimes in our podcast description? Because you wrote this description maybe a year ago at this point now.
Yeah, it's crimes that I do, right? It's like a crime that I've done on the day. No? Okay, go ahead. What is it?
Will it be something boring like credit card fraud or something sexy like a casino heist?
Yeah. I don't think credit card fraud is that boring.
You called it boring.
I called it boring. It's on me.
What's today's crime?
Today's crime is...
I just gave you two.
No, I hate to be incredibly political about this, but...
Keep in mind this is going to come out in like 6 weeks.
This is evergreen, man. Bodily autonomy is democracy. So today's crime is the state continually trying to take away access to abortion from people everywhere in America. That's not a fun crime, but that's a real crime that's actually happening.
Transition into some upbeat song. Here we go.
afraid. Do not be afraid. Your arms are wrapped around. Do not be afraid. And claps your hands resound. Do not be afraid. Your feet they map the ground. Do not be afraid. You'll have night vision. Do not be afraid. Your whole body. Do not be afraid. When it's jostled. Do not be afraid. We'll spend time. Do not be afraid. And over. Do not be afraid. We'll spend time. Do not be afraid. In the mountains.